So I'm very into philosophy, but I'm not super into philosophy that I'm reading philosophers. I don't really have time to read philosophers. I would love to. Um, but something I know the basics like Socrates and Plato and Descartes and Galileo and who else do I know? Just Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, um, Soren, what's his name? Soren Kierkegaard, like the very basic tier one kind of philosophers. Um, but the topic of philosophy interests me. And I remember I used to hate on philosophy because I was like, oh, who needs it? But to help you critically think and kind of process information, process the world, try to find a coherent structure for understanding the world, philosophy is very useful. Um, at the same time, though, well, before I get into that, I want to jump into a little story that I had with a coworker a few days ago. This coworker is very much a nihilist, doesn't believe in a god, doesn't believe in anything really. And they were talking about how sometimes they feel like they would like to end existence. Um, but then that they've been dealing with these feelings for a long time, so they're not going to do it because they've been fighting it for so long that they know that these feelings aren't theirs. Blah blah blah. And I was like, don't. And I don't know if this was callous of me, but I prefaced it with what I said. I said, I don't want this to come across as me criticizing you or me calling you wrong or anything for what you're feeling. But keep in mind that doing that is the most selfish act that you can do. You hurt everybody around you, and because of your worldly framework, and I said this with as much respect, and I try to preface it with like with as much respect as possible. I'm not trying to fight you. I'm not trying to argument. I'm not trying to be rude, disrespectful, or anything. Um, but I told them with your framework, like, it doesn't really mean anything either way. So now you're just hurting the people around you. Nothing really happens. It's just an end, right? An end of existence because this person is an atheist and nihilist. Um, but think of the people that you do leave. Think of your roommate, what you'd put your roommate through. If you did do something like that, you're traumatizing this person for the rest of their life. First, you got to think of that. Like, that's super messed up. If you were to do that, that's super messed up. And then think of your family, think of your friends, think of your work, think of your life. Um, and then I challenge this person, and well, why does your life have value? Like, where do you find value in your life? And I just try to listen and ask questions just to genuinely understand, because this person is not dumb. This person was not is not a dumb person, and by the way that this person speaks, I can tell there is intelligence, there's coherence, there is basic understanding of philosophy. But the point that I want to get at is that um, I did ask this person this question, and I've never really asked this before, but it is kind of a interesting question that you can question your atheists or your nihilists or your quote unquote philosophers. Is there's you believe in millions of years of history because you believe in evolution, if they believe in evolution, right? Some people don't, some people do. Um, you should believe that history is a real thing, one. And then if you're familiar with philosophy, you know that these people who were philosophers were incredibly intelligent, genius level intellects. The most intelligent people, Plato flexing on his haters when he was getting debunked. I think that's funny. But there is levels of intelligence that these people had and sole dedication to this focus, no distractions, no social media, no 7-second brain rot. These people were solely devoted to thinking. There's nothing else that they did but think and work. And while they're working, they're thinking because what they're working on isn't anything incredibly complex that requires soul-minded focus. It's okay. We're chiseling some granite now, or we're you're writing, or I guess writing requires intelligence, but you're chiseling granite, or you're cleaning, or you're cutting wood, or something very mindless, repetitive tasks is what most people did back in the day. So I'm like, these people are number one, way more intelligent than you. Number two, have so much more time than you, have lived much longer than you. What makes you think that you can figure out what they haven't been able to figure out? Because clearly they haven't figured it out, because every philosopher has a different idea. They all have different foundations. So what makes you think that you're better than them? And I genuinely ask this in a very respectful way because like I'm curious. Because I was the same way and I think it's pride. But then this person explained how out of spite, like they think that out of spite they can figure it out while these other philosophers can't because it doesn't really take much effort to think of what Socrates thought or what Plato thought. It does at their time because nobody really ever thought of that. They kind of redid philosophy. They were the first of the big thinkers. But that's something I've never really thought of, and I don't know if you've ever thought of that. That what gives you the right or what gives you the knowledge to think that you can figure these things out? Um, and there's an answer to it, or two, not an answer to it. Um, I don't really know. It's a very open-ended question, and I ask myself the same thing of orthodoxy. What landed me in orthodoxy? And it's very much the reason that I do not trust my own understanding. I do not trust my own interpretation of texts of the scripture of history. So I'm going to rely on an institution that has been here for thousands of years and has the promise of Christ. Um, and that's been consistent for thousands of years, and we can read it historically that it has been consistent. So I'd rather put my faith and trust in that institution to tell me how to interpret the scriptures rather than just John MacArthur or Billy Bob, the pastor of the Baptist church down the street. There's a structure, there's a foundation, there's a normative authority there. Not to get too deep into the religious realm, um, but I did want to kind of challenge you guys who if you're watching this channel, you must be like me or you must think like me. You must be more driven than other people or you must want to learn because you're watching a YouTube channel of a 23-year-old just yapping, ranting about life as if I have anything that I can share that's of any value. Um, just talking. But you must be somebody who's trying to find what is right or find out how to do things right. Because that's the whole purpose of this channel is to kind of figure out life alongside me. And I think a lot of it has to do with being confident and being trusting your decisions, trusting your gut instinct, and doing the best that you can. Um, at the end of the day, with the conversation with this person, was can you go to bed and feel like you have earned your rest? I think that's what matters at the end of the day. Did you earn your rest? Do you have integrity? And what is integrity? That's a whole other conversation. What we colloquially use as integrity as honesty or being true to yourself when nobody's looking, being true to what is quote unquote correct when nobody's looking um, in every situation. Like if you can conduct yourself with integrity and go to bed feeling rested because you worked hard, that's what matters. Um, it is so interesting how the scriptures did predict what we're going through in a world full of immediate gratification and immediate information. The book of Ecclesiastes really does hit. And if you're an atheist, I would encourage you to read the book of Ecclesiastes. If you're a non believer, if you're of a different faith, just for the sake of just common philosophy. Um, a little basic story is that this person was a king, an incredibly wealthy person, successful person, intelligent person, the wisest person around, access to as many women as desired, access to all the riches, all the entertainment, all the wealth, all the knowledge of the world. And this person lived in that fullness of the world for their entire life until the very end. And when they're old, they realized how much time they wasted, how meaningless everything was. It's a book written for common man who experiences the world and experiences the emptiness of the world. And he realizes that none of it really matters. None of it really matters. It's all fake. It's all a distraction. It's all a ploy. It's all an illusion. It's unfulfilling. And what is fulfilling is having some sort of structure, having some sort of purpose, having some sort of faith in something greater, in wisdom, which wisdom is Christ. Christ is wisdom. Um, but even if you take away the religious aspect, it can be wisdom as in knowledge, wisdom as in lessons learned from the past that can help you live a better, quote unquote, better life. Now, all of these terms have, if you get into philosophy, all of these terms have very different meanings, and you can easily fall into the what's it called, the fallacy, the word concept fallacy, where a word has a different definition but we use the same word. Like in, like Christ would say Allah for God, but then Muslims say Allah for God, but then they say that that's the same Allah, that's the same God. That's a word concept fallacy. um, so with all these terms you can get into the nitty gritty, but for sake of ease of understanding, these will be just the basic colloquial terms that you understand. The basic definition, Webster definitions, with a pre-Christian grounding of the world, because that's what we live. We live in a post-Christian grounding of the world where Christianity truly has defined most of existence nowadays. And the terms used are based off of Christianity, whether you're a Christian or not. Integrity is based off of Christian values. Honesty is based off of Christian values. Truth or justice are based all off of Christian values. So, not necessarily to push Christianity, but to kind of show or have a strict understanding of these terms, um, so that you can understand what I'm saying, rather than having to dive in. Oh, what does this mean? And pull a whole chart of Peterson. Oh, what does truth actually mean? What does truth actually mean? I don't want to do that. I think that's a big waste of time, and most people know. I think there's it's it's a funny thing, um, but I know a lot of the time there's this meme going around that whenever you make generalizations and the person tries to find the exception to the generalization, that shows the person to be dumb, because ooh, but actually, well, actually, they're trying to be intelligent by bringing the one exception to the rule, but in reality, the rule is the generality. Um, and we live in a generality based world. Generally, most people have 5 fingers. Generally, most people have 2 arms. So a shirt generally is going to have 2 arms, or 2 armholes for the armholes, and then a neck hole for the head. So the world exists off of generalities, or runs off of generalities, off of what's common, off of what's commonly understood or commonly accepted, majority. But that brings up a whole different topic about majority. But anyways, um, yeah, I just find it interesting how, and I completely understand with the nihilistic world, because there is so hopeless, but at the same time there's no need for hope, because it's all hopeless and meaningless. So might as well just do what you want to do, or identify how you identify, or work how you want to work. There's no real purpose in anything. So I completely understand that, because I did experience that at one point. Um, but then everybody has to ask themselves a question about value. At the end of the day, everybody's going to be encountered by that question. And how do you answer that question? Well, or when will you encounter that question? You'll encounter it when your mom dies. Like, why? What's the value? Why did she die? Why did she have to suffer? Why did this have to happen to me? Like, why does life have to end? Why does there have to be separation? Why am I here? Why am I not with her? Why did she die and not this other person? Everybody encounters that question when their parents die, when their pets die, when their brothers die, when their partners die. Everybody has to ask themselves that same question. Uh, Unfortunately, most people do live in a delusion where they are not existing to ask themselves those questions. And that was a really good sign that I told this person was, you're asking these questions. At least you're asking these questions. A lot of people don't. Most people do not ask these questions while they're young. Now, I think everybody does encounter the questions, but for example, if you're 22 years old and you ask yourself these questions and you find an answer, or you find a structure, you're going to be much better off than the person who waits 55 years and then their mom dies, and then they start asking themselves these questions about meaning and purpose and what they're doing. Now they're 55 years old. What can they really change? What can they really adjust? How can they adjust the trajectory of their life? They're already halfway through, more than halfway through. 22-year-olds can completely transform the structure of their life, completely transform the path of their life by just asking themselves these questions or finding an answer to these questions. So if you're young and you're watching this, ask yourself questions. Don't just take what life gives you at face value. Question everything. Question literally everything. Everything, every answer somebody gives you, every explanation somebody gives you. Ask why. Well, what does that mean? Why does that mean? Don't fall under the thoughts of you being correct, you being always right, you knowing. And I know that's a big thing with us young folk is we are very prideful because we have access to all the information you could ever need, all the information you could ever want, and yet there's so much uncertainty. Um, so don't fall under the, or if you do fall under the thought of pride, at least ask yourself questions. You don't need to listen to other people. You don't need to justify yourself to other people, but ask yourself questions. Do not think that you're always right. And in my case specifically, that led me into orthodoxy. And now I'm actively looking for reasons why orthodoxy is wrong. And I've yet to find it. I haven't found why Christianity was wrong. I did find why Protestantism was wrong. I did find why Catholicism was wrong. But I haven't yet to find why orthodoxy is wrong. And so that's why I have begun the process of being a catechumen for the Orthodox Church, to be baptized into the Orthodox Church. It's not just a decision that you make, like, oh, I'm Orthodox now. No, it's a process. I technically am an Orthodox catechumen, so I'm Orthodox, but I'm not an Orthodox Christian yet officially because I have not been baptized. So as soon as I'm baptized, I'm an Orthodox Christian. But currently, I'm a Orthodox catechumen. Um, but ask yourself questions, and I think if you do have that pride, it's kind of hard because I think pride is justifiable in a world where people don't really have anything of value to give, and you have to do the finding yourself, or you have to do the searching yourself because other people don't really have answers, or people are not smart enough to have answers, or they don't know where these answers are, or they have been so set in their ways that their answers are really not of value. And that's something that happened to me is some of these people are so old or so set in their ways that any knowledge that they were to give me or wisdom that they were to give me was kind of useless because, well, okay, economically, it's not going to help me. You bought a house for $40,000. I have to buy a house for $400,000. So you're telling me to not buy a cup of coffee a day, and I'll be able to invest that into S&P, and over the span of the next 50 years, I'll be able to have $100,000 saved. That's meaningless. That means nothing. That means nothing. So economically, I can't take your advice. How about religiously? Well, you're this hyper Zionist or hyper religious person who is the entire structure of a religion has been based off of fallacies or errors or schisms. So religiously, you can't help me. Being a father or being a man of the household or hard worker, you worked a corporate job for 50 years, got a pension and retired. Okay, pensions aren't a thing anymore. Retiring is barely a thing anymore for us, and it probably won't be a thing for my generation at least. So, okay, thank you. Being a father, you let your wife run over you. Your wife hates you. You submit to her every decision. You say, happy wife, happy life. You put your wife in this position where if she's feeling bad, you feel bad. No, I don't want that. I'm not a loser. I'm not a cuck. I'm not a pathetic man who's going to let my wife run over me. No, but I'm not going to beat her either. I'm going to have my own ways because I'm an individual person, and a relationship is two individual people coming together to work together to find a common objective. In the Orthodox case, it's theosis. It's to join the fullness of Christ. So it's two individual people trying to push each other to find the fullness of Christ. It's not my wife is my better half. So relationally, they can't give you any help. So I completely understand pride in youth because you do have access to everything. But because there's access to everything, there's access to extremes, and you can fall into the extreme red pill, and you can fall into the extreme blue pill, or the black pill, or the white pill, or all these different terms we use for this. But at the end of the day, just do your best. Work hard. Do your best. Get outside your comfort zone. Try to learn. Ask yourself questions. There's a lot of growth that can happen in the real world. So that's it for this yap session. Um, if y'all have any questions, put them in the comments down below. I love chatting with you guys, and I'm thankful for all the engagement. Um, yeah. Anyways, God bless.